I was gonna make this video about samplers and then this thing happened. One of my buttons here on the Excel just went in, it broke. This is the thing about buying old samplers, is that stuff like this can happen and you're just out of an MPC. The good thing is that I can always keep this as spares, so if my past sensors go bad on the new MPC that I'll get, I can swap them with these. I can use all this, and that's what you do in these type of situations. So I really want to get an Excel. I'm starting the year with some new merch. Still isn't out. Hopefully my girl's taking care of that. I don't have time to take care of merch as well, but hopefully we'll have some merch for you guys in case you're interested. This should be the logo. Hope you guys enjoy it. Anyway, let's get into the video. I know samplers pretty well. I know how they work, so why not just make a video trying to help someone that's buying a new sampler. These are the things that I look for. Everyone kind of has their own needs when it comes to samplers. 2-3 things that I think are most important, which is the sampler. So how does it record in? How does it sequence? And how does it chop and treat samples? So let's unpack this a little bit and see what we have here. So what do I mean about sampling? How does it record in? What options do you have to record in your samplers? How many inputs do you have? Do you have more than just one input? Some samplers don't have inputs, like the model samples from Electron. It's just a sampler. You have to load samples into it. If you're not worried about recording, if you just want to load samples, then that could be a good sampler for you. When recording, some samplers are monophonic, other samplers are stereo. Take for instance the Polyphony tracker. You can listen to everything coming in stereo, but at the same time you can only record in mono. My 60 here, it's a monophonic sampler. Once I went into the Electron, the analog rhythm, once I went into that, it was a bit weird for me to be working with mono samples because I'm so used to working in stereo. It's a huge change, but a lot of people love it, and I'm beginning to love working in mono more than working in stereo. I still love my stereo samples, but my drums more and more, I'm trying to keep them in mono. Other things like, can it stream from a card like the SPs, which means you can actually load a huge file if you want. You can load up an entire song. Some samplers have like really unique things to them, like the SP404 skip back function, which is really amazing function. Some samplers can listen to radio as well. So there's that. Some samplers have these clever little options for you to get sounds into the sampler. Talking about IOs, some samplers like the MPC right here has the option to be connected to an audio interface. You can have an MPC1 which only has 2 inputs, but you can expand that by having an extra audio interface, and that becomes part of your MPC. Phono in, the MPCs have phono in, which means you can connect a turntable directly. Oh, I think the MPC 4000 has phono in. I think the S2400 from Island Instruments also has that. And I think it might actually have 2 phono ins, 2 separate stereo phono ins, which is really good. Sometimes I feel very limited, like the SP right here, only having really 2 outputs and 2 inputs, a stereo out and a stereo in, because I might want to send signal to several machines at the same time. This is not so much about the physical inputs and outputs, but the when you're playing a beat, some samplers won't allow you to listen to or go into the browser to preview samples. The SP404, you have to stop the sequence for you to go into the loading and listening to samples. The 2000 XL is the same thing. You have to stop the sequence to go into the sampler to listen to samples coming in. This you can actually do, which is an older sampler, but you can monitor the audio coming in as you're listening to the beat. So there's that as well. Can you listen to your beat that you're making and previewing sounds at the same time? Once you have those samples in, the next thing I search for is, how does it treat the sample? How can I chop it? How many options do I have to chop? How many effects does it have? Does it have envelopes? Does it have LFOs? What's inside of that sampler that I can use to just change my sample, to treat it, to give it a different texture. Some samplers, they don't have slicing, like the MPC60. The SP, just now it got slicing in it. The older samplers from Roland, the other SP 404s, 303, they don't have chopping, they don't have slicing. Some samplers come with a very minimalistic slicing option. I don't know how the Machina is, but in that respect of chopping samples, the MPC is one of the best ones out there. There's different ways of chopping. There's manual chop, there's lazy chop, there's all sorts of ways to cut a sample, and how easy they make it so you can use those chops in the sequencer. Some machines, they allow you to chop, but then it's a pain really to use the chops or the slices that you created to record them into the sequencer. One of the important things is polyphony. You have to look out for polyphony. So how many samples does your sampler play at once? So the SP, I don't even know, but I think it's 16 polyphony, so you can play 16 samples at a time. The MPC right now, I don't even know, to be honest. I'm not sure if it's 64 or 32 polyphony, so you can play up to those numbers at a time. The Polyphony tracker that I have right there, it's 8 polyphony. The S2400 is 8 polyphony. The Electron products normally are 8 polyphony as well, the Rhythm, the Digitact, the Octatrack. And what that means is that they actually have 8 tracks, and each track is monophonic. So their polyphony is tied to the sequencer. I mean, a lot of music was done on the SP1200, which is 8 polyphony as well. So, I mean, what can I say? Do I need to say more than that? Because I kind of grew up with an MPC with my Excel, which is, I think, 32 voices. I really never had that limitation, so it's kind of weird for me to bump into that wall. Could be strange if you're coming from a sampler that has a high number of polyphony, a higher number of voices, right? And as I said, like, some sequencers have the voices tied to the sequencer, so each track is a voice. Like the Polyphony tracker, it has 8 tracks, each track is a voice, so you can input different samples into one track, but it will only play one sample per track at a time. So there's that. There's some sequencers are really weird sequencers, like the Polyphony tracker. They're meant for creativity. Other sequencers are very generic. I just need a sequencer that is intuitive, that can easily put notes in. I can easily just put my ideas down without trying too hard to record an idea. So how easy is it to record a slice, to record a sample? How easy is it, and how fast is it to record that note into the sequencer? Here is really where it really sets samplers apart. Some samplers don't have sequencers. Look at the MPX16 from Akai. It's really just a sampler. It doesn't have a sequencer. Like the SP404 here, for instance, it doesn't have any tracks or anything. It's just a loop, and then you record it into the loop. Kind of like a looper in a sense, right? You have a loop going, and you can record sounds into the looper. So it's kind of like what the SP404 does. Other samplers have step sequencing, which I really love. To me, one of the best samplers out there is the Analog Rhythm, because it has a step sequencer that's really intuitive, really easy to play, really easy to input notes and try different ideas. And I think the sequencer is really the heart of the sampler. You can sample, you have different inputs, different outputs, you have different effects in each sampler, but really the sequencer is the thing that will make your music sound in a different way. The Polyphony tracker, because of the way it works, and the way you've input notes into the sequencer, and then the effects it has for you to input in the sequencer, it gives you a certain glitch and a certain experimental sound at the end. And that's because of the way it works. Yeah, I can make just very simple boom bap music, hip hop music on my Polyphony tracker, but it makes you want to experiment a bit more and see where you go. And it always takes you to a place that my MPC never takes me. Really, the sequencer is kind of like the heart of the machine, is how you can pick those samples and expand them. So after I know all the ins and outs, I know how to chop, I know how to sequence, I need to know the filters, I need to know the effects, I need to know how I can actually change my samples. Does it have any envelopes? can I trigger it in different ways? So that's going to really help me to expand on my samples, right? I need to pitch them, and can I pitch them in a group? Because I might have a lot of chops, and if the sampler can't help me to pitch everything at once, so it's going to be really a pain to be changing the pitch of each sample. How easy is it to work? How's the workflow really? Can it time stretch? What are the options? Can I create audio tails? Can I loop sections of the sample? So yeah, how does your sampler really sound? Because when it gets to this point, you're gonna be working with the filters, and the filters will give a certain color to the samples. What type of effects does it have? Does it come with any compressors at all? Does it have EQ or not? Some samplers don't have EQs or compressors. I think one of the things that I really need inside of a sampler is a filter. My 60 doesn't have any filters or anything, so it's really a shame. I have to be sending samples out through whatever sampler I have on the side, and then treat that with a filter and sample it back in. The other thing that I look for, and this is like the worst thing about samplers, is a song mode. But look into that. Some samplers are really bad at that. Others are a bit better, but in my opinion, almost all the samplers are bad when it gets to arrangement, except for the Akai Force, which has an arrangement view. I worked with it. I didn't like it too much, only because each track had all the MIDI notes in one. Like there were no regions, and that's how the Force is. I don't like it too much, but it's the best thing I would say that we have as a song mode in any sampler. To be honest, like it's one of the worst things about samplers is that you can create an idea, but then it's just so hard to finish it. When people create samplers, it feels like the song mode is just not important. But look into that. Look into the song mode and see what kind of song mode it has. You have all these questions as well that you might want to answer as well. Do you really need another sampler? How does it fit your workflow? How does it fit your studio? Do you need like an overall sampler that does everything, or you want a sampler that does a specific task really, really well? I think the SP404 is perfect for that. For me, like it has the necessary things. It can sample, it can chop, it has beautiful filters. It's really all I need in a certain way. Just the sequencer is bad. I think money is really down to the person that wants to buy the sampler. You can work things on a computer. Obviously, you can always export stuff into the computer and finish it there. In my opinion, this is like the most complete sampler there is. This and I think Machina are the most complete samplers that do very generic things of music production. But then you have the more creative samplers as well, like the Electron stuff, Polyphony, built-in battery if you want portability, touchscreen. In my opinion, that's overrated. Working with the Electron Rhythm, I really never had the need for any touchscreen. The user interface that I didn't talk about, but it is an important thing, just how easy it is for you to access parameters of the sampler. How easy it is for you to navigate? Do you have a lot of menu diving? So the Analog Rhythm was a very simple, it is a very simple sampler, and it has a user interface that's just beautiful. One of the best in my opinion, one of the best samplers in my opinion out there. When it gets to that user interface, having a touch screen or not to me is really irrelevant as long as I can access my parameters quickly. The size of the machine is another thing that you can consider. The pads, portability, all these things you can think about, but to me, the things that I mentioned before are really the most important things. How you sample, how you chop and treat your sample, and how you sequence your samples as well. So yeah, I mentioned a lot of things. Hopefully these things will help you when picking out a new sampler, and there's hardly a good choice because each sampler does its own little thing better than the other one. Like this one can chop better, this one has better filters, that one's more simple, that one is more creative, and then it's really down to you which road you want to take, because that will influence on the outcome on what the music is, because you have to think about what type of music you want to make. If it's more creative, maybe get a sampler that is a bit more creative. If it's a very simple formula like hip hop, then an MPC could be fine, an SP can be fine. You know, they really, even though you can make boom bap beats on an Electron product, obviously. I hope I helped you in some way. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Peace.